This is Bill Newman, WHMP.
We welcome back to the show and to the studio Rich Michelson and Martin Espada. Rich Michelson, of course, has the R. Michelson Gallery here in Northampton. His books have been listed among the 10 best of the year by the New York Times, Publishers Weekly, and the New Yorker. He received a 2016 Massachusetts Cultural Council Fellowship, 2017 National Jewish Book Award, 2019. These awards go on and on. And Rich, in addition to being a, curator and having this spectacular gallery, is a really quite well-known and very accomplished author. Martin Espada, of course, is the award-winning, national renowned poet. And they are here today because we want you to know about a new anthology, What Saves Us? Poems of Empathy and Outrage in the Age of Trump, edited by Martin Espada. Rich Michelson, tell us what's happening, where, when, and why.
Well, first of all, what happened to the NPR intro? Geez, I go on hiatus, I come back, and everything's different. I mean,
Northampton Poetry Radio.
Thank you. Geez, I gotta retrain you guys after a couple months.
You want to do it all over?
Ready?
Take
We'll start over. Take two.
This is Bill Newman,
Thank you, Rachel.
WHMP.
Welcome to NPR, Northampton Poetry Radio, with our erstwhile poet laureates. Poets Laureate.
Right.
Rich Michelson.
Attorneys General.
And Martin Espada.
Now I feel at home. All right, we're back. We're back with our usual. So we have a great event coming up this Friday. It happens to be at R. Michelson Galleries in downtown Northampton, right on Main Street. And we are celebrating the publication of a brand new anthology, I believe, out this week. Correct, Martin?
Correct.
It is What Saves Us?
Could you just say correct again, Martin?
Yeah.
We should we'll get him to do the NPR intro.
Yeah.
Dulcet tones.
Yes, really.
What Saves Us? Poems of Empathy and Outrage in the Age of Trump. It's a new anthology edited by Martin Espada. It includes some great poets of national reputation and also a number who live in this area. And they will be with us this Friday at our Michelson Galleries from 6 to 8 p.m. Please put it on your calendar. Reading that night will be Doug Anderson, Naomi Ayala, Sean Bates, Brian Clements, Adam Grabowski, Paul Mariani, Leslie McGrath, myself, Rich Michelson, Lauren Marie Schmidt, and Martin Espada. That is quite a lineup gathered, and this is going to be a celebration of this incredible anthology. Martin, I'm curious because I really don't know, even if I'm in this. How did this come to be? Was this something that you just thought up and then started asking people, or was the project brought to you?
It was something that came to me. I felt urgently the need for poets to speak out on what is happening in our country today. And at the same time, I wanted to give them a forum to do that. Poets need a place to gather, whether it's a physical place like your gallery or whether it's between the pages of a book. That's how movements start, at least among poets. And I could say a little bit about the anthology. I can read a paragraph from the foreword, which will explain something of the notion behind it.
Please, yeah.
Or
talk a paragraph.
I'll talk a paragraph. Basically, as the foreword says, this is an anthology of poems in the age of Trump and much more than Trump. To be sure, there are poems about Trump and his pathological demagoguery, or that rose in the throat of the poet the day after his election, some in mourning, some organizing the next protest. More broadly, however, these are poems that either embody or express a sense of empathy or outrage in the age of Trump, both prior to and following his election, since it is empathy the president lacks and outrage he provokes as a result. These are poems that confront the culture and values of Trump, even if they predate his regime. These are poems that speak from the heart of the communities most gravely endangered in our times, or on behalf of these communities, poems that reflect the unstoppable diversification of the society, poems that assert our common humanity in the face of dehumanization. And in fact, there are more than 90 poets in the book who are doing exactly that.
And did you reach out? Did you put out a call to poets, or were these primarily people you knew, and then it grew from there, one to another?
I put out a call, and I got a remarkable range of responses, including, I want to add, responses from people who are literally on their deathbeds. Right? 3 contributors to the anthology have since died, including Adrian Lewis, Sam Hamill, and Donald Hall.
Mm-hmm.
But that was the urgency they felt in terms of getting something into the anthology that spoke to our times. And every single poet that you mentioned does exactly the same thing. Doug Anderson is a Vietnam veteran. He speaks from that perspective. Brian Clements, his wife Abby survived the Sandy Hook massacre. Right? He speaks from that perspective. We have elders in our community like Paul Mariani, who is speaking from that perspective. And then, of course, we have people like you and me.
And how did, and we'll get a chance to read later.
I'll follow that up.
Brooklyn transplants.
Let me ask, we're going to have Martin read his contribution to this anthology. Could you look at, Martin, the beginning of the preface that you wrote that begins November 2018 and read that paragraph for us? Because I think that also describes part of what this book is about.
Yes. If you want to know where it came from, this is how the preface begins to the book, What Saves Us. November 2018. There is a caravan of Central American migrants straggling through Mexico on a pilgrimage to a place they pray will save them. The President of the United States promises to send thousands of federal troops to the border to halt what he calls an invasion, claiming, without evidence, that terrorists and criminals march with the families hauling infants. He authorizes these troops to fire on anyone who throws rocks, equating pebbles with bullets. The first troops have arrived at the border, rifles bristling, despite the fact that the caravan is hundreds of miles away. Meanwhile, migrant children taken from their parents at the border languish in makeshift prison camps. This is not a novel. This is not a dystopian fantasy. This is our country under the regime of Donald J. Trump.
You have a contribution of your own in this anthology that you are the editor of, What Saves Us, Poems of Empathy and Outrage in the Age of Trump. Would you share that with us?
Absolutely.
Before you start, let me just say that you are listening to NPR, Northampton Poetry Radio, the Bill Newman Show, and you can hear Martin and some other poets read from this anthology, What Saves Us, Poems of Empathy and Outrage in the Age of Trump. You can get a copy of that book as well Friday evening at 6 o'clock at our Michelson Galleries in Main Street, 132 Main Street in Northampton. And Martin?
Yes, this is my contribution to the anthology. It's a poem where I speak to my father, despite the fact that he is 4 years dead at the time. And it's about Puerto Rico after Hurricane Maria. Letter to my father, October 2017. You once said, my reward for this life will be 1,000 pounds of dirt shoveled in my face. You were wrong. You are 7 pounds of ashes in a box, a Puerto Rican flag wrapped around you, next to a red brick from the house in Utuado where you were born, all crammed together on my bookshelf. You taught me there is no God, no life after this life, so I know you're not watching me type this letter over my shoulder. When I was a boy, you were God. I watched from the 7th floor of the projects as you walked down into the street to stop a public execution. A big man caught a small man stealing his car, and everyone in Brooklyn heard the car alarm wail of the condemned, "He's killing me." At a word from you, the executioner's hand slipped from the hair of the thief. The kid was high, was all you said when you came back to us. When I was a boy, and you were God, we flew to Puerto Rico. You said, my grandfather was the mayor of Utuado. His name was Buenaventura. That means good fortune. I believed in your grandfather's name. I heard the tree frogs chanting to each other all night. I saw a banana leaf and elephant palm sprouting from the mountain's belly. I gnawed the mango's pit, and the sweet yellow hair stuck between my teeth. I said to you, "You came from another planet. How did you do it?" You said, "Every morning, just before I woke up, I saw the mountains." Every morning, I see the mountains. In Utuado, 3 sisters, all in their 70s, all bedridden, all Pentecostales, who only left the house for church, lay sleeping on mattresses spread across the floor when the hurricane gutted the mountain the way a butcher slices open a dangled pig, and a rolling wall of mud buried them, leaving the 4th sister to stagger into the street, screaming like an unheeded prophet about the end of the world. In Utuado, a man who cultivated a garden of aguacate and carambola, feeding the avocado and star fruit to his nieces from New York, saw the trees in his garden beheaded all at once like the soldiers of a beaten army, and so hanged himself. In Utuado, a welder and a handyman rigged a pulley with a shopping cart to ferry rice and beans across the river where the bridge collapsed, witnessed the cart swaying above so many hands, then raised a sign that told the helicopters, "Campamento Los Olvidados," Camp of the Forgotten. Los Olvidados wait 7 hours in line for a government meal of Skittles and Vienna sausage, or a tarp to cover the bones of a house with no roof, as the fungus grows on their skin from sleeping on mattresses drenched with the spit of the hurricane. They drink the brown water, waiting for microscopic monsters in their bellies to visit plagues upon them. A nurse says, "These people are going to have an epidemic. These people are going to die." The president flips rolls of paper towels to a crowd at a church in Guaynabo, Zeus lobbing thunderbolts on the locked ward of his delusions. Down the block, cousin Ricardo, Bernice's boy, says that somebody stole his can of diesel. I had somebody ask you once what Puerto Rico needed to be free, and you said, 3 pulgadas de sangre en la calle. 3 inches of blood in the street. Now, 3 inches of mud flow through the streets of Utuado, and troops patrol the town as if guarding the vein of copper in the ground, as if a shovel digging graves in the backyard might strike the ore below, as if La Brigada swinging machetes to clear the road might remember the last uprising. I know you are not God. I have the proof. 7 pounds of ashes in a box on my bookshelf. Gods do not die, and yet I want you to be God again. Stride from the crowd to seize the president's arm before another roll of paper towels sails away. Thunder Spanish obscenities in his face. Banish him to a roofless rainstorm in Utuado so he unravels one soaked sheet after another till there is nothing left but his cardboard heart. I promised myself I would stop talking to you, white box of gray grit. You were deaf even before you died. Hear my promise now. I will take you to the mountains where houses lost like ships at sea rise, blue and yellow from the mud. I will open my hands. I will scatter your ashes in Utuado.
You're listening to NPR, Northampton Poetry Radio, the Bill Newman Show on WHMP. That was Martin Espada reading A Letter to My Father from his anthology, What Saves Us? Poems of Empathy and Outrage in the Age of Trump. Friday night at R. Michelson Galleries, 132 Main Street in Northampton. Please come join us. Listen to Martin and many other poets reading their poems. We're going to take a break now, and we will be right back.
What time does the event begin?
It starts at 6 o'clock on Friday, 6 to 8. It'll be a celebration. We'll have some food, some wine, and some poetry.
We'll be right back with Rich Michelson and Martin Espada.
This is Bill Newman, WHMP. This is Bill Newman, WHMP.
We continue with NPR, Northampton Poetry Radio, with erstwhile Poets Laureate Rich Michelson and Martin Espada. They are here. Can I go back to talking? Okay, this is NPR, and we do have Rich Michelson and Martin Espada here, and they are here because we want you to know about the book launch, the gathering, the reading, the discussion that will happen at our Michelson Gallery this Friday evening beginning at 6 o'clock. It's the book launch for the book What Saves Us? Poems of Empathy and Outrage in the Age of Trump, edited by Martin Espada. We have with us those two poets, and Martin shared his work in this anthology. I would love Rich Michelson to share one of the poems that he has in What Saves Us as well. Rich?
Thank you. Before I do, I just wanted to mention a couple of things so I don't forget afterwards. One is this is a beautifully looking, put-together book, and the cover of this book, because you just read an incredible poem about your father, is a photograph by your father, Frank Espada, who was
a distinguished photographer.
Incredible photographer. Actually, we will have some work of his on view during this reading at our Michelson galleries. Frank really photographed the Puerto Rican diaspora in this country, and
yes. And you can't see it on the radio, but the cover is a photograph by my father from the Puerto Rican Diaspora Documentary Project. The subject, Marta Jimenez, who lost 2 sons in gang warfare in Chicago. So that was his mission as a photographer, and something that clearly influenced me as a poet.
Yeah, it's beautiful. So come tomorrow, you'll see this book, and I'm going to read a poem that is actually a sestina. For people who are not plugged into that, a sestina repeats the last 6 words of every stanza, and you'll kind of get a sense of the pattern as it goes on. So, and then in the final stanza, those 6 words are all repeated within 3 lines. This is a poem called Gossip is Forbidden. It was actually a poem that was inspired by a Martin Espada poem. About what was it? I don't recall the title. Jumping off the bridge.
Jumping off the Mystic Tobin Bridge,
Right.
which I don't recommend, by the way.
But I recommend the poem, which you've also read on
the poem, which you've read here,
intense.
and that poem, in fact, when you first mentioned this anthology and put out a call, this poem had not been written. So I did not send it to you, but I heard one of your readings and it inspired this poem, and I was pleased to finish it with some help by you, some word choices, just in time to make the deadline for this anthology. Gossip is forbidden. Gossip is forbidden, the rabbi said, peering over his bifocals. If you steal goods or money, you can repent and repay, but not so the evil tongue. Permission to shoplift is what we at 15 heard high-fiving outside the synagogue door. Catch us if you can, we'll atone in 50 years if any one of us is left alive. Today, at 65, I see 3 teens pocketing chocolates from the neighborhood market, stuffing their stylish kangaroo pouch Patagonia hoodies with 92% dark Ghirardelli plus boxes of good and plenty pink candy. I start to speak, then, biting my tongue, wind it back into the clammy dankness of its mucosa-lined cave. One boy turns, sees me seeing, and freezes until the ringtone of his iPhone breaks the spell. The tableau instantly comes alive, each of us playing our part. And you, dear reader, who are still alive, need to know that in the year of our Lord, 2017, white hooded hoodlums marched through Charlottesville, Virginia, atoning, Jew will not replace us. And our president said there were good and bad apples, bigots, and very fine people on both sides. tongue-tied. I cannot believe what my ears have heard. So I replay those 5 words again in my mind. Jew will not replace us. When I was 5, my grandfather reprimanded my new first-grade schoolmates with 5 words of his own. Words hurt worse than stones. His mother tongue was Yiddish, and I was shamed by his accented appeal to the brotherhood of white America. I'd already heard kike and Christ killer and the Good Friday prayer for the perfidious Jews. For years, I spoke a monotone to distance myself from those excitable Semites whose dark skin tones proved, until it didn't, then did again, that they would never be saved. A curse could kill, my grandmother knew, so she stayed silent at goodwill, working us into the mainstream, her prayers parting seas, saving us with each penny saved. Thank God she didn't live to see herself hoodwinked. Behind the bars of her teeth, guarded by lips, her tongue, locked up like a murderer serving a life sentence, stills my own tongue. As these 3 boys saunter down the aisle, defying the overtones of racism, one boy Latino, 2 black, the Pakistani earning his livelihood behind the counter pulls out a gun. And here again we freeze, all 5 posed like a Ghirlandaio fresco, when straight from the mouth of the cave, Jesus, resurrected, walks through the open door. I bring you the good news, he babbles, speaking in tongues. He picks up and pockets a good land apple. Oh, my undocumented rabbi, I intone, what parable can save us? In the beginning was falsehood and truth, he says. Speak, my children, and live.
You're listening to Rich Michelson read from his poem, Gossip is Forbidden, part of the anthology, What Saves Us? Poems of Empathy and Outrage in the Age of Trump. There will be a book launch, signings, Q&A, discussion at the R. Michelson Gallery this Friday, 6 o'clock. What Saves Us? Poems of Empathy and Outrage in the Age of Trump, edited Martin Espada. Martin Espada, Rich Michelson, thank you so much for being with us today. Thank you for this book. Thanks for this contribution. This is going to be an amazing event on Friday, and I look forward to it so very much.
Thank you, Bill.
Thank you. Look forward to seeing everyone there.
This is Bill Newman, WHMP.